All right, good news, guys.
Got me.
Hey, I got man Stitch. What's going on, fam? Let's give Stitch Duran a warm welcome and round of applause. Yeah, man. Stitch, how you doing, fam?
I'm all right, man. Just doing a little bit of yard work. I am human, by the way, and kind of like being a homebody when I'm at home. And so I
Yeah.
was trimming up some of the palm trees and all that. But I'm doing good, man. I've been blessed. Finally get to hook up with you, Malachi.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. It's amazing. You say you're Cuban because Florida have a huge Cuban population in this state.
Oh, no, well, shit. I'm Mexican. I'm on the west side. I'm the
You're on the
other.
west side.
I'm the
Huh?
Mexican man. Over there and the Puerto Ricans, but the Mexicans on the west coast.
Stitch, for all those who may not know who you are, who maybe be under a rock, let people know who you are and what your background is.
Yeah, well, you know, I guess my claim to fame is being a cut man, right? And so my job is when I get in the dressing room, I'll wrap the fighters' hands in theory so they don't break them. And come fight time, is I'm the cut me mitt guy, right? So my job is to minimize any injuries and give them every opportunity to win the round and go that one more round. But I grew up as a farm worker in Malachi in the Central Valley of California. I left when I was 20 years old. I joined the military, but God, I tell people if you ate it, I probably picked it for you. It's what I did. But my dream was always to play baseball, and I couldn't do it. Walked on to a college and didn't have a car, so I joined the Air Force. And in 1974, they stationed me in Thailand, and there I studied the martial arts and got me to this level. So it's been a fun career.
Stitch, it's amazing because a lot of people don't really understand the importance of a cut man. You seem to be part of the most famous cut man I know of. Why is that though?
I I think performance has to kind of go up to the top. Uh, I don't know. I've worked with so many world champions in all sports at the high level. One of my specialties is wrapping hands, and that's always a good commodity to have when you're working with a new fighter, and you give them that point of confidence. And but it's funny because I did an interview the other day, and the guy, I said, I'm trying to name three cut men, and I can't. So, yeah, three cut men. I think that was a very fair question. I've never heard that before, but I guess let me ask you.
You're the only one I know.
Yeah, yeah, seems to be the case.
Yeah, you're the only one I know. Um, how many movies have you been in?
Seven. I,
Seven movies.
I've been in seven. I've been in eight. One was with Edward James Olmos, by the way, and Anderson Silva, uh, that fought in the UFC. But that was an independent, and I just kind of went in there to help them out. But on the IMBDs, I've been in seven movies, nice ones too.
You look like you look like the I forgot the Mexican actor that played in American Me. You
Ed,
I swear to
I get it all the time, and that's why when I did the independent movie, it was with him, and I always wanted to meet him, because of course he's a Mexican actor and is a great actor, and but I knew he was going to be at one of the UFCs because him and Anderson Silva were going to do a movie, and Anderson Silva was the main event. So I'm in the back, I'm wrapping hands, and one of the UFC staff says, "Hey man, Edward James almost wants to meet you." So I finish wrapping hands. I go down the hallway and I turn right, and where the green screen's at, he's there, and we look at each other. We start like, thank you. And he called my mother, and we talked, and so I did the movie just to help him out. And but he says people call him Stitch all the time, especially when he goes to fights.
man Stitch. Speaking of fights, as it relates to what happened this past weekend with Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora, that was a bloody fight. I did get a chance to see it. Um, People are all over the place with this, and a lot of people are upset at what transpired. In your opinion, what went wrong in that fight?
For the most part, everything. It's keep in mind, Malachi, in our game, in our sport, combat sports, which includes MMA, bare knuckle fights, boxing. None of us have to be certified to be considered a cut man or to be even considered a trainer, right? All you need is a license and hang out in the gym and work with fighters. But that that was a bad cut right from the get go. It was it was right on top of the head here. And if, when we laugh, that big vein that pops out, that comes down there, that is part of that. Once you pop that, the chances of controlling it are extremely, extremely hard because the blood flows so heavily that the medication you put on it, it won't absorb it. And the adrenaline chloride 1/1000 that we apply as a medication, that's a vasoconstrictor. But that vein is a little bit thicker than the smaller ones, and it's very, very hard for that to close. So, but what should have happened, and I know because I've been in those situations like 3-4 times, right? In the UFC, Forrest Griffith, and I worked with Jay Haran. Jay Haran was the bloodiest fighter I ever worked in my life. He popped that vein, and both fighters had blood from the top of the head to the bottom of their feet, and you just can't control it. But what I did with Vladimir Klitschko, and they should have done that. And Velika, that's why it's important to know the rules and regulations. So Vladimir Klitschko had just come back from losing his world title to Layman Brewster, and he fought Devereux Williamson here at Caesars Outdoor. And the first time I worked with him, well, he wins the first 3 rounds, right? He just come back from losing his title. He looked okay, but not great, right? Well, in the 4th round, he gets dropped by Devereux Williamson. In fact, Devereux Williamson said I changed his whole life. I screwed up his career. Anyway, so he got dropped. All right, but he's still winning 3 rounds to 2. When you get dropped, you get 2 points. So in the 5th round, he gets that unintentional headbutt, that cut right there. And I've worked on those before, but percentage-wise, and where we're at, the best opportunity for him to win this fight was right then and there, because in my anticipation, he was ahead by 1 point. So when the doctor came in, I told Vitaly and I told Vladimir, I whispered in their ear, Emmanuel Stewart's over here. He didn't hear it. But I said, look, you got a back cut. You're winning the fight. I'm going to have the doctor stop the fight. So when the doctor came in, I worked with Dr. Goodman many, many, many times. She says, what do you think, Stitch? I go like this. I opened up the cut. I said, that's pretty bad. She stopped the fight. It went to the scorecards. Vladimir Klitschko ended up winning the fight and became world champion for 8 years. So the next day she calls and she says, I called Emmanuel Stewart and I called Vladimir, but the surgeon says it was a good thing you stopped the cut when you did, because it was close to an optical nerve and it would have created double vision. Well, with Tim, they should have done the same thing. It was before the end of the 4th round, and it was a world championship fight. So I would have had the doctor stop the fight, get a rematch, and then and not only that, but it prepares him for a guy that's 6 foot 6 inches, right? And so that would have been the proper thing to do.
Drew says that he said he hate when cut men don't wear gloves. Why is that?
That's horrible. That's thank you, Drew. I always tell these young guys, these young fighters, I try to educate now, Malachi. But I tell these young guys, I said, look, number one, if you're looking for a cut man, ask him what that medication does, the adrenaline chloride 1/1000 that we put on the cuts. If the guy tells you it's a coagulant, get another cut man, because that's a wrong answer. It's a vasoconstrictor, right? But that's my point is nobody really goes through any courses to know the fundamentals. Another bad thing is I created the wrist wrap, all right? And that's where we put the swabs here. And I tell these guys, if they put the swab in their mouth or in their ear, get another cut man. Same with the gloves. It's filthy. You're working on an open wound. I tell the guys when I work with new fighters, I say, look, just give me his face. You guys do everything else. I don't take the stool in. That's filthy. If you see a cut man grabbing the stool, that's probably the dirtiest thing in the ring. Guys down, sweat, and just everything. But yeah, if you don't wear gloves, that's, and that's a good point, Drew. But if you notice the new generation of cut men now, they have the gloves, they have the wrist wrap, they put the swabs here, they put the Vaseline here, and they work a lot easier. That's the new generation, and the techniques that I've been using, for years. But those are the best probable ways of working a cut.
Your background is MMA, because I remember when we spoke in Vegas, I didn't even realize this, but you told me no, you was a cut man in the MMA. And how did that transfer into boxing? Like, how did you get into boxing from the MMA?
Well, I was a cut man in kickboxing first, right? Because I had my own school of kickboxing. When I got back from Thailand, I got into boxing to improve my hands, just to learn. And then from there, I started working with amateur boxers. And then I opened up my own school of kickboxing with just a credit card to show you how crazy I was. But it was called ASK, the American School of Kickboxing. Well, from there, I was a trainer before I was even a cut man. But I had to learn to be a cut man just to know all aspects of the game. And as I was learning to be a cut man, at that time, it was only boxing. So I remember I went to a fight in Richmond, California. Bone Crusher Smith fought Marvis Frazier, son of Joe Frazier. And this guy did a good job on a cut, one of the earlier fights. And I went and asked him, I said, look, I'm trying to learn to be a cut man. Can you tell me what you did? And the guy says, fuck you. I'm taking this to my grave and you got to learn like me. And he walked away. So I said, I'm never going to be like this man. Never, never. But that was a mentality then. And now my job is to teach.
So he didn't want to share the knowledge.
That was the old boxing mentality. No gloves, swabs here, swabs there. That was the old, it's because the blind led the blind. And when I got into the game, I looked, something as simple as gloves. You should have them just out of respect to the fighter. And even a sponge. You see guys with a sponge and they asked me about that and never use a sponge. If you do it, it's only for that one fighter. Because if you clean them up, you're still going to have blood within the little areas of the sponge. If you use it on somebody else, and that's going to go to them. Just common sense, bro.
Man, that's crazy. So in this particular fight, this fight should have been stopped. I think it's an overall consensus. Yeah. Everyone agrees that it should have been stopped. Why the doctor didn't stop it?
Well, it's probably because it was a championship fight, right? Probably more than anything, yeah, that would be my only thought. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. I was literally watching the fights in the dressing room because for me, that's a better position, instead of sitting at ringside with people yelling. So I got to hear the commentating and I got to see the close-ups. But I don't know. It could have been that it was a championship fight and they try to give them every opportunity to win the fight.
How what gets me is what you said. You said that you don't have to go through any kind of school or training or whatever to become a cut man. So how do you know you have a good cut man or not? There's no, I think even in the NFL, the referee, you just can't be someone that comes off the street and become a referee. What's the process of picking a cut man in boxing?
Past performance. What have you done before? Who have you worked with? What kind of recommendations? Wrapping hands. There's been many, many times I've seen guys wrapping hands and I look at them and there's even been times when commissioners have asked me, can you wrap this guy's hands? Because I don't know what he's doing. And it's a shame at this stage of the game because the bottom line in our sport, combat sports, it's a hurt business. And if you don't know how to take care of these guys, it's not fair to these fighters.
It's crazy. So I heard that Tim Tszyu had a busted vessel in his head, in his forehead, right?
Yeah, it was kind of up actually on this side up here, but up to
he couldn't see.
Blood was getting in his eyes.
So technically, he's like he lost kind of like by default because he was forced to fight blind. His corner didn't. So could the corner have said, "Hey, listen, we need to stop this fight"?
100%. I did. I did. Yeah, of course. The bottom line is safety for the fighter. Bottom line, the only line is safety for the fighter. And if the fighter is at big disadvantage, then that's not fair to the fighter. Now, keep in mind, this was a world championship fight. Fundora came in as a last-minute replacement. This young man is 6'6" tall, and he could fight. So Tim Tszyu had to make an adjustment on the size alone. So if they would have called it a no contest, a rematch would have almost been automatic. And then you could prepare for a guy that's 6'6" instead of a guy like Keith Thurman that's 5'10", 5'11". That's a big difference in disparity. But that's why you got to have a good team with you.
It's amazing you said that because I'm saying if the doctor didn't stop the fight, forget the team. If the team don't stop it because of their negligence, and they should have stopped it, they should have requested to have it stopped. But is it safe to say that, okay, so the doctor, this is a championship fight, there was a high stakes fight, a lot on the line, they had the vacant WBC title up for grabs, and Tim Tszyu had the WBO strap. So is it safe to say that, I don't want to sound harsh, but whoever was involved with the decision making or whatever the event, they was putting profit over the fighter's health?
No, I don't think so. Not at all. I think when the doctors and let's talk about the doctors, and just because I've worked with many of these, and let's say it was past the 5th round, All right. And if it goes past the fifth round and they stop the fight, it goes to the scorecards. And the point is, who was winning at that point? Was it Fundora or was it Tszyu? So I think the doctors probably at that point, since the corner didn't stop it, they figured, let's keep an eye on him. And both fighters were bleeding heavily, right? So it was a two-way street. So, and the thing about the doctors in Las Vegas, they don't freak out with blood, right? And even though it looks bad, there's some detriments that go with that. But I think in that aspect, they might have said, you know what? It's past the fifth round. I can't decide. I can't stop the fight and decide who's going to win the fight. I don't know. That's a good question. And when the next time I run into them, I'll ask them.
Do you know if Cutman use what's it called? Throbin?
Thrombin?
Thrombin, yeah.
Yeah, thrombin. Let me explain to you the medications and that. The primary one is the adrenaline chloride 1,000. That's one we put on the cotton swab. That's a vessel constrictor. So if you notice, I'll squeeze the cut. And how many times you get cut, Malachi, and you do this, and blood coagulates itself, right, with direct pressure. So what I'll do is I'll squeeze it. And in theory, what I'm doing is the little blood that's still stuck inside those little vessels, I'll squeeze it to clean that blood out. Then I'll put the swab in there, and that absorbs into the veins, and it'll close them. So that's the adrenaline chloride 1,000 by prescription only. And it's like $300 a bottle. The other two, actually, there's three of them, but thrombin and avitine. Thrombin is a liquid base, and the avitine is more like my wife explained it best. It's like a cotton candy type of fiber, but you put that on there and it's white, and once you punch it, then it takes the clot off. So it doesn't really. It's good for surgery. It's good for after you get into a fight, and you leave it on till the blood dehydrates. There's another one called Quick Aid that's 100% natural that I introduced through my trial and errors with MMA fighters. It's 100% natural. It's made out of a seaweed base, and it's a patch, and you put it on the cut, and what it does, it dehydrates the blood, and that doesn't require a prescription. And I recommend everybody to get it, and that's available at Cutman for Hire Supplies. So it's Cutman and then the number 4 supplies. He carries that, and I recommend everybody to have it.
You know what I'm thinking? Because they said that Fundora had a broken nose. So what I'm thinking is this here. Next time Tim Tszyu fight again, it'd be smart for him to hire you as a cut man.
Well, somebody of experience, if it's not me, somebody else, and that's the shameful thing on this. And I've met the young man, he's trained here in Vegas, and, God, he looks just like his father, And I remember his father used to train here, right? So it's on them.
Has there ever been like a bidding war to hire you? Let's say you got two fighters who want to fight each other, and both of them call you, hey, Stitch, I want you to be my cut man, and the other guy. How do you go about deciding have you ever experienced something like that?
Well, in boxing, no. I got to say in boxing, no. But when I was with the UFC, it happened all the time. Because the UFC would hire us to work with them, right? So once they found out that Stitch was working, they would want me to wrap their hands, and just by the luck of draw, I would be in the red corner. So whoever the UFC assigned to the red corner, I would get them. But let's say I could wrap your hands and work with the other guy. So I was very neutral on that. My job was to give these guys security. And like Vitor Belfort said, he said a great quote. He says, when I see Stitch walking into the dressing room, even though I know he's working in the other side, he brings that calming effect, right? So he knows, my only job. And, Frank Mir, when I see Stitch walking into the dressing room, my stomach drops because I know it's time to fight.
But see, this is the thing. So you have a lot of experience from the MMA.
Yes.
What are some of the worst cuts that you've seen that even you couldn't stop the bleeding?
Well, this one right here, that's, that one right there has been really about the only one, and a lot of times, Malachi, this is a good point. If you can't stop it, at least you could control it, and when when a doctor or a referee stops a fight, it's when a fighter is at a disadvantage where he can't see or there's bodily damage, that's when they stop the fight. But if you could control the bleeding and it's not affecting the fighter, then that's a plus too.
What about? Let me ask you this: what about the referee? Could have been a point in time where the referee could have said, "Hey, you know what, man? I'm stopping this fight. This guy can't see. His
Yeah,
blood is coming to his eye."
yeah, exactly, 100%. The referees will converse with the doctors, and a lot of times the referee will call timeout, and he'll take the fighter to the doctor, and the doctor will evaluate him, and then they talk amongst themselves. And a lot of the times the doctor will say, "Look, if he continues taking shots, stop the fight." So he's entitled to that, but they all work together. And as Richard Steele and Joe Cortez said in an interview that I did with them years ago, they always see who's working the corner. And if it's someone of experience, then they'll give them that additional benefit to work on the fight.
I didn't even realize that. So the referee does take that into consideration. The
100%.
corner.
Yeah, 100%.
You know.
I've seen horrible work, Malachi. My kids grew up in the gym, so they know the game. And let's say I'm doing a show in New York, and the guy's doing a bad job. I'll get a call or message from my son or my daughters, and they'll say, "Look, this guy's doing this wrong." And it happens all the time. Happens all the time.
The one Mr. Ham says that shout out to you, fam. He said great interview, coach. He said Mr. Stitch is a prime example of how paying it forward yields long-term success.
Well, thank you. Yeah. You try to take care of these babies, man. And they are babies. I always say, deep inside, they're all modern day gladiators. To get in the ring and do what they do, but deep inside, they're all babies. And my job is to take care of the baby, and they understand that. Many times fighters give me a kiss and they tell me they love me. And just because we have that bond.
The crazy part about it is, now that I'm talking to you, you're right. You do bring a sense of calmness. It's like, okay, they got Stitch Duran. I don't know what it is. It's like you have like a fatherly energy or whatever, but it's okay. Stitch is there. I know he's a really, really good cut man. You're the most famous cut man that I know. Apparently, you do a really good job because you still work MMA, right?
No, I'm boxing only. The UFC, Dane White fired me 9 years ago for speaking out about the Reebok deal and kind of supporting the fighters and ourselves. But I became the face of the rebellion. So that's another story, bro. I became the face of the rebellion, and I'm glad I did it.
Dana White fired you about a deal that UFC had with Reebok?
Yeah, well, what happened is I knew Dana way before the UFC, and he brought me in. I was doing a K1 kickboxing at the Bellagio, and he's in the audience, and he asked for my card, and the next day he called and says, "Hey, look, we bought the UFC, checking to see if you'd be interested in being one of the house cutmen." And at that time, with the original UFC, the only cutman was Leon Tabbs. He was the legendary cutman that worked with Bernard Hopkins. Mm-hmm. So when Dana and them bought the UFC, they brought Leon on board. And Dana was smart enough to realize that MMA was such a new sport that guys didn't know how to wrap hands or work cuts. So they brought me in to work one side of the one corner and Leon Tabbs to work the other. And it got to the point where, sponsors, we're all making money on sponsors. UFC at that point was paying garbage. But I was making my money through sponsors, through watches, through clothing, apparel, and, Zions and Bad Boy and, Tap Out. And the fighters were making 50, 100 grand a fight, making shitload of money. So they went to Reebok exclusive and didn't let the fighters know. And everybody's disappointed. And so they're hating UFC, Dana, Reebok. And so John Nash from bloodyelbow.com, never met the man. He called me and asked if I'd be interested in doing an interview of how the Reebok deal affected the cutmen. And of course, being that I grew up as a farm worker, my parents were always fighting for the rights of the farm workers with Cesar Chavez. So I spoke out, and it was very corporate, because I work corporate America. It was very politically correct. But maybe I said that I got to concentrate a little bit more on boxing, since boxing pays a lot more than UFC. Well, that shit went viral. And I did like 57 interviews in a week, and they called me, my friends called me, and the only thing they said is, because of the interview you did about Reebok, the UFC is not going to use you no more. And I said, all right, Mark, do me a favor. You tell Dana, I said, he ain't got no balls, that he should have called me personally, since he's the one that brought me in. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the first response I get, I replied that I'm gone and got to look for a new job. And sure enough, from there, I got offers all over the world. So
That's crazy. Okay, you just educated me on something. I used to watch UFC back in the day, like in the early, like 93, 94. I don't know if it was called UFC then. That's when Ken Shamrock was
yeah,
Ken Shamrock, Tank. I think Tank Abbott.
yeah, of course, worked with
Yeah,
them all.
yeah. So you said Dana White bought the UFC?
Well, the Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, the two brothers bought the UFC, and Dana was always he was one of their friends, so they made Dana the president of the company. But yeah, Dana didn't he didn't invest in it. He became the face of the UFC.
Did he? Did he? I know in boxing a lot of people talk bad about Dana White. I get it. I understand that. I'm not getting caught in the emotional aspect of it, but did he like revolutionize the sport in your opinion for the better?
Yeah, no, he did a great job. I until this point, but the thing with the when I first started with the UFC, I think there was 12 employees. It was that brand new, and then at that point we were all names. So we worked on names, and Dana says as we make money, you all make money, right? And but then they went into the corporate status, which I understand. It's a business, and when you go into corporate status, you kind of get rid of the names and you go into numbers, and the numbers are profit margins, and that I understand, but there's certain ways of going about corporate America, and they kind of went the hard way and didn't give the fighters any opportunities, and so yeah, till now people still stop me all over the world, and like Wesley Snipes at the Creed movie, hey man, UFC did you wrong. Bill Goldberg, hey man, that's damn, I got respect for you, But the best compliment I got was one of the Brazilian coaches when we had COVID. We were doing shows here at the MGM, and I hadn't seen him in 8 years. He comes up to me and he says, Stitch, we the coaches, the fighters, we thank you for speaking up because we couldn't. From there, I could have died right then and there, Malachi.
It's amazing you say that because do you think that the coaches, trainers should have some type of union if they could?
Well, yeah, 100%, and that's something that we're working on behind the scenes. I'm still fighting for the struggle, but it's a shame in this day and age that boxing, all combat sports. I did a documentary, got 23, 24, maybe 25 years ago, called Boxer's Nightmare. Never did nothing with it. This young man that helped me, John Barnhouse, passed away about a year ago, and I looked at this film, and I'll send it to you once we're off. I'll send it to you. I looked at this film and I'm thinking, wow, everybody here are all Hall of Famers. I got Mike Tyson before he got his tattoos. I got Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, Fernando Vargas, Emmanuel Stewart, Mills Lane, Joe Cortez, Richard Steele, Chuck Bodak, Doc Brodus, Joe Lewis's daughter. I got all these people that talked about the issues that were happening then, and nothing's ever been changed. They all had solutions, and nothing has ever been changed. Until now. So we're going to make an effort to, they should have pension plans. They should have insurance. Mike Tyson said very simply in this interview, and I'll send it to you. He says, guys like me, Lennox Lewis, Oscar De La Hoya, when we fight, get some of our money and let's give it to these guys. We don't need it. We're taken care of, but let's give it to these guys. With that being said, and then Mark Ratner was the president or the CEO of the Athletic Commission. Says the money comes from the pay-per-views. So there's money to be created to take care of these guys, but nothing's ever done anything about it. So, yeah.
Hey, Stitch, I'm glad you said something. You said that boxing pays more than the UFC. The question I have is this. When you say the boxing pays more than the UFC, are you talking about, because, in boxing, there's not a bunch of Canelos or Crawfords or, Tank Davises or Tyson Furies. Most of boxing is blue collar fighters. Those guys don't make a whole lot of money. Are you saying that? Are you saying that those blue collar fighters make more money than the fighters in the UFC, or are you just talking about the top guys?
No. The all boxing pays more than the UFC, and Francis Ngannou that just fought Tyson Fury, right? I think for a championship fight, he was a world champ. I think he got something like $700,000 to defend his title. And I think when he fought Tyson Fury, somebody's talking about 30 million. But the thing I liked about Francis is that he says, hold on, he says that whenever I fight for PFL, because he signed with PFL Bellator, whenever I fight, my fighter or my opponent will get a minimum of $2 million. So the actions are starting to create, and and there's people I'm working with that are working on at least getting a pension plan and insurance plan, and one of the things is these guys are all independent contractors, but you can still get an insurance plan and a pension plan. Let's say you're in the gym or one of your fighters in the gym, Malachi, and he breaks his hand in the gym or he gets cut sparring. Well, if he goes to the hospital, he goes under the ABC association. Well, they would pay for that service. Very simple. Why not? These guys deserve it.
I've heard some horror. I don't know much about UFC. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm very ignorant when it comes to UFC. But boxing, I've been watching boxing. I'm 50, so I've been watching boxing since I was like 8 years old, and I've just heard horror stories about boxing. Man, just fighters getting how they get beat out of their money, and the blue collar fighters don't nobody really care nothing about them. So it's like I've been hearing horror stories about boxing.
Oh yeah, in this documentary, it's a great It's called Boxer's Nightmare. Really, when I looked at it, I'm thinking, wow, we did it on pretty much on a zero budget, but nobody got the interviews I did. And Mike Tyson says, he goes, look at guys like me. He goes, I lost over $100 million. And what do you tell your family? What do you tell, this is what makes the fighter punch drunk, and those are comments coming from high-end people. But even something as simple as manager agreement. The maximum that a manager could take from a fighter is 33 1/3%. Fighters don't understand that maximum, and they'll a lot of times they'll sign them up for 33 1/3%. So Rolando Arellano, that managed Fernando Vargas, says, look, if all you're doing is making a phone call, you should be entitled to 10%. You're basically an agent. But if you're paying for this guy, you're investing in him. You're paying for his rent, his food, his car, his training expenses. Then you're hoping that you would make the money down the road. Then 33 1/3% is acceptable. But they don't tell these fighters that. And a lot of guys sign up a contract at 33 1/3%. They get screwed.
It's very similar to the music industry from what I'm hearing.
Yes.
So the fighter, so the fighter gets paid his money. Let's say he get paid 100% of his money, but then the manager is going to get 33 1/3. Let's say he has a contract structure like that. Is that 33 1/3 of the gross or the net?
It should be off the gross, I would think, because he has to pay his own taxes. I would think so. And then not only that, but then now you got to train, you got to pay your coach, which is usually about 10%. If you have sparring partners, you got to pay them. You got to pay the gym dues. So if you make 100,000, you might end up with 50 of that. 50, the other 50 goes to taxes and paying off your the people that you work with.
So again, when you get paid, they need to set that you get $100,000. You're going to pay taxes after you pay everybody out.
Well, that's the manager sets up for them.
Right. So, but the promoter got to get his cut too.
Well, the promoter shouldn't get his cut because the promoter you're fighting for the promoter, But that's where Mike Tyson says, "Look at me, I got screwed out of hundreds of millions of dollars." And who do you think screwed him?
Yeah, we already know. Hey, Stitch, but hold on. But on the flip side of that, our good brother Don King would say, hey, look, baby, he was making $30 million a fight with me. Now, if he ain't managing his money right, how y'all gonna blame me for that? That ain't my fault. That's what Don would say, or any other promoter would probably say.
Well, that's of course. What else are you gonna say?
Hey, Stitch. So doggone the fighter. So I got a mean question. Being what you know about the sport of boxing right now today, what advice would you give a fighter? You heard the great stories, but you heard the horror stories from a financial standpoint. You see fighters after they get beat, after fights, they get used up or they don't have any more market value in the sport. They get kicked to the curb. We don't hear nothing about them anymore. What advice would you give a fighter and coming to boxing?
Well, you know what? If you do it for the money, you do it for the wrong reasons, because not everybody's going to make money, and you got to have a passion for what you do, and and enjoy it. Because as they say, 1% of the fighters make 99% of the money.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I walk into the gyms, I'll go to the Mayweather gym and Salas's gym and Bones Adams gym. And I look at all these fighters and they all have one dream, and that's to become a world champion. But not all of them will become a world champion.
It's amazing you say that. 1% of the fighters make 99% of the money. So the 1% would be the top name guys, the Canelos, the Anthony Joshua's, the Furies, this and that. And I tell my audience over here all the time, I say, bro, look, it's not a bunch of Canelos running around boxing. It's, you have those top guys that's making money, but then those other guys, they got to get in. They got to get in where they fit in. And you have promoters. They have the relationships with the networks. So it's kind of like the fighter is at the mercy of, I guess, a promotional company.
Yeah, of course, and even the management team. A lot of the promoters or the managers are locked in with the promoters. But as Fernando Vargas says, I got to look. I got to understand everything: international sales, concessions. But that's why I tell these young guys is if your manager or agent is negotiating a deal with you for you, you should be there sitting with them and understand what's going on so that nothing goes, where the manager will or the promoter will say, well, look, come here, manager. You know what? Let me give you this percentage and give this kid that percentage. So a lot of times the manager can make more money.
That's a conflict of interest, though.
Well, of course it is. That's why that's why you got the Muhammad Ali Reform Act bill, but that really hasn't been enforced as much as it should be.
Do you think that some promoters, I'm not saying no names, just throwing it out there. Do you think that some promoters have found a way to subvert the Muhammad Ali Act?
To do what now?
To subvert it, like I know how to get around that.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's really been no substance to it. It's a great program, but really there's no substance to the Muhammad Ali Reform Act bill right now. Nobody's really, a lot of people aren't following it to the T. So it's nice to have it there, but it's not working out.
If a fighter starts asking about, like you said, the fighter need to be right there with the manager who's negotiating the deal with the promoter. If he start asking about international sales and let's say sponsorships and stuff like that, the fighter could be labeled as being, I don't know, in the sport, difficult to deal with. He's hard to negotiate with. When you start asking questions about, okay, but wait a minute, if I'm the one putting my life on the line and my name is a part of this fight, and because of my name, as well as everybody working together, we're generating all of this money together. If I start asking about those things, because I'm gonna tell you where I'm going at. What I notice in boxing and the sport today, the modern day fans, they want their fighter who they love to make all the money, and they'll get online and brag and yeah, my fighter rich, and they'll threaten other people, argue, debate about their fighter. But when it's a fighter that they don't like, and he started asking those type of questions, it's a problem. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand, and you should ask those questions because without a fighter, you don't have a manager. Without a fighter, you don't have a trainer. Without a fighter, you don't have a cut man. So he is the boss, and that's what people have to understand, that the fighter is the boss. And like in any business, you always hire different people to do different projects for you under the same umbrella. And that's what a manager would do, and that's what a trainer would do, and that's what a cut man would do, part of the program. But the money comes from the fighter. Right?
I said this on the show. I say, listen, because I hear Leonard Ellerby say all the time, well, boxing is a business. It's a business first. Yeah, but the sport is what generates the business. There's no such thing as the business of boxing without the sport. What makes the sport what it is are the fighters. So don't tell me, well, the fighter needs to understand the business. No, if it wasn't, the fighter is the one generating the business.
Yeah, exactly. And Leonard Allaby's money is, or his position is money.
Right.
His only position is to create money, income. I can understand that, right? So that's his mentality. But in the same token, our job is to take care of the fighter.
I got a couple of super chats on Stitch. This guy, shout out to Stephen X. He said, "What do you think about Ryan Garcia's antics?"
I don't know. I don't think they're working. I know I saw him kind of drinking a bottle of liquor. He don't drink. That's yeah, all that's bullshit.
Shout out to Candy Slim. He say, would Stitch be interested in posting that documentary on YouTube? And has he ever had a cornerman go down, and he had to step in and give instructions? Oh, it's a good question.
Yeah, well, the documentary. Here's what I want to do. I'll send it to you and take a look at it, and maybe we could discuss it. But what I want to do is,
Yeah, please send it to me. We can make something happen with that.
what I want to do is update it and use some of these. I mean, the great comments from these legends, and use some of those points, and now get new interviews with MMA guys, because now everything affects MMA, and then current fighters like Nico Ali and Biagio. They're Muhammad Ali's grandsons, and I worked with Nico, and I talked to him, and it'd be nice to get their opinions. MMA guys, I see MMA guys that are now going through dementia pugilistica, the punch drunk system, the slurred speech, the managerials, so everything, nothing has changed. So yeah, we're gonna, it will be out, and hopefully soon.
Man, it's amazing. Stitch, listen, I don't want to take much of your time. I have just a couple of more questions. So, it amazes me that you said that the fighter is the boss. A lot of fans don't know that. A lot of fans today, they side with the promotional companies, the networks, this and that. And the image that's being put out there is that no, the promotional companies are the bosses. The fighter has to fall in line and do what they're told. Only some fighters are looked upon as being the boss. Canelo Alvarez, well, Canelo's a boss. He does what he wants to do. He's on a different level. But everybody else got to fall in line. To me, that's complete bullshit.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can understand the business aspect of a promoter. Yeah, fall in line. Here's what we want you guys to do. But the initial conversations, when it deals with dollars and cents and who you're going to fight, all that decision should be based on the opinion of the fighter. So your job as a manager is to get you maximum exposure at a minimal cost, and to take care of you.
Some of these promoters, I've been hearing horror stories. I'm not saying any names. I don't know names because I don't want nobody saying Stitch said anything. Stitch is not saying anything. This is me. I'm not saying no names, but I've heard horror stories about managers of fighters being compromised. They're being a little too cozy with the promotional company, and they're kind of like it's a conflict of interest because now they're working more for the benefit of the promotional company because the manager may have other fighters. He's trying to get fight on that card with that network. So now it become compromised. Not saying no names, but just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and you're probably 100% right.
Hey, Stitch, listen, thank you so much, brother, for taking the time out. I don't want to hold too much of your time. Could you let anyone who may be watching the show, if they want to get in contact with Stitch Duran, hire you for your services, or are your kids doing cut?
No. They just know the game.
Do you plan on how many more years do you think you can want to continue doing this?
Until my mechanics fail, but I'll still be doing educationals, and I'll still, if I'm not going up and down the stairs because of mechanics, then I'll still be using my expertise to try to make this game a lot safer. So I'm
sorry about that. I will get in contact with you about the documentary that you worked on.
Just send me your email, and then I'll send it to you. And it's like I say, it was done pretty much on a very minimal budget. But when I looked at it after not seeing it for so many years, it's not even about that. It's about the interviews that I got and the responses that were given to me by these legends. It blows my mind. Mike Tyson was phenomenal.
Yeah, I bet he was. I'm just texting it to you now, my email. Stitch, thank you so much for taking the time out to do this interview. Are there any parting words that you would like to give anyone who may be listening?
Nah, well, Chad, I think you guys asking about when's it's going to come out on YouTube. Well, they're doing a documentary on my life. It's called From the Fields to the Garden, because I wrote a book called From the Fields to the Garden. The fields were growing up as a farm worker, and my goal was to make it to Madison Square Garden. We've been there many times. So anyway, our last day of filming is April 28th, when I get inducted into the National Boxing Hall of Fame in Los Angeles.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And then August, I'm getting inducted into Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. So a lot of good things are happening. Got a new cannabis line coming out in June.
Oh, boy, ooh, yeah, listen. You said cannabis. Now, I'm an app. Now, I support the greener things in life. So, when that come out, please let me know. Because I will be back in Vegas to do this show at a podcast in Vegas
Yeah.
at a cannabis dispensary.
Oh yeah, we'll hook you up with Planet 13. It's the biggest one in the world. That's where we're having the coming out party. So it's when they came to me, they do for Snoop Dogg and Elton John and all these high ends, and I told them the best weed I ever smoked was a Euro station in Thailand. If you could create something as good as that, which was Thai stick, we'll call it Thai Stitch. So the product will be Stitch.
Oh, they talk the chocolate Thai.
Yeah, there we go.
Back in the day, yeah. All right, well, Stitch, man, thank you so much, brother, for taking the time out, man. I'm gonna call. I will call you. I'll text you the email, and please send it to me.
All right, Malachi.
Man, I'm out of here, bro. Let's go.